There's a guy who likes games,
and the best
that he's played are the ones that you'll see on the top 100. Repeat that part. Top 100 games. Good.
Much like that I get a little bit, just a little bit freaky, that's right.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that may discriminate against games, but it doesn't discriminate against Croatians. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Cody, and welcome to this edition of our Top 100 list, my Top 100 games of all time, as of October of 2015. So we're going to jump right into it. Today we're going to take a look at my number 40 through number 31. My number 40 is a game that is new to the list this year. Now, I got to tell you something. This was a game that I loved right when it came out. I played it a lot. I played through a campaign of it. I played the individual games, and I was just in love with this game. I kind of played it so much that it kind of lost some of its luster. I still love it. I still think it's a fantastic game, but I'm not in love with it anymore. It was difficult to break up that way. But I do enjoy it very much. This was also my number one game of 2014, my number one game that was released in 2014, and that, of course, is Star Wars Imperial Assault. Now, Star Wars Imperial Assault, of course, is a very fun game. As I say, you can play the campaign game, where it's kind of a one versus all. One player plays the Imperial, the other players play the Rebels, and you go on various missions, about roughly 10 missions, give or take. But then you can also play the two-player skirmish mode. Now, Aaron Bellis and I, we actually played a two-player skirmish mode not too long ago. You can see that on our YouTube channel, the playthrough there, and remind us of all the rules we got wrong. Thank you. But it's a fun game. It's a dungeon crawl. It's essentially Star Wars battles. The low-level Star Wars battles between kind of commando units. Think Han Solo's raid on the shield generator at the end of Jedi. That's kind of what these battles are, and they're really a lot of fun. It offers a lot. The campaign has a great strong story narrative to it, and the individual skirmish modes, they are highly thematic as well, and they are a lot of fun. So if you're looking for like a fun little skirmish game for two players, this is great. If you want a big, grand campaign adventure, this is also great. This is Star Wars Imperial Assault for Fantasy Flight Games, new to the list this year. It is my number 40. My number 39 fell a little bit. It was my 25 last year, and this is a game that I absolutely love. It's just an incredibly fun game. I've got both the expansions for it, and I'm hoping they make more. I was kind of scared they weren't going to do any more expansions, but they have. This is Star Trek Fleet Captains. Now, if you like Star Trek, you have got to play this game, because this game is... Tom Vasil said it was Star Trek in a box. He's right. That's what this game is. You command a fleet of starships in the base game, Federation ships or Klingon ships. And you're kind of competing against each other, but you can, by the expansions, you could play up to a 4-player game with both Romulans and the Dominion as players as well, or you could play whichever factions you wanted to play against each other. And essentially, you're exploring this area of unknown space, and you're turning over these tiles. They're kind of weak paper, but paper tiles. They're not very strong cardboard tiles, so that's disappointing. But other than that, it's great. You're turning these over, and they represent kind of different sizes of space that you have to go through, and you have kind of the HeroClix thing where you have different settings on your ships, shields, weapons, engines, all these things that you're constantly kind of flipping around to kind of maximize your options during your turn. And of course, there's battle. There's a lot of combat in the game. But there doesn't have to be. In fact, a lot of games I played, there was no combat at all. But there can be, and you can easily make this a war game if you want to, or if you just want this to be more kind of a game of who can complete the most scientific missions or other kinds of missions, espionage missions first, you can do it that way as well. A lot of different ways to score points, and it's brilliant game. I love Star Trek. I love Star Trek Fleet Captains. Once again, this is my number 39. It was my number 25. That is from WizKids. My number 38 fell a few spots. It was my number 31 last year. This is a classic game. In fact, when I first started reviewing games for the Deseret News, written reviews, this was one of the first games I reviewed. It was it was the first game that a company sent to me to have me review. This is from Wizards of the Coast. It is Betrayal on House of the Hill. This is a brilliant Halloween game. Perfect game for Halloween, I should say. But it's fun all year round. Essentially, you all go into a haunted house. You're exploring a haunted house. As you move into different rooms, you're building the house, and as different symbols come up, you've got to roll die, and as soon as you roll the right number of die and symbols come up on the die with the right number of symbols you've laid out, a haunt triggers. And the haunt is something different every time. It turns one of the players, into a traitor. It's not a hidden traitor, everybody knows it, but you don't know who it's going to be until the haunt happens. And then they go ahead and they attack all the other players. There's a great story narrative that happens here. It's just a whole lot of fun. It's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant haunted house game. Every time we play it, we have fun, we laugh. A whole lot of fun. So that is from, again, Wizards of the Coast. That is Betrayal on the House of the Hill, my number 38. My number 37 fell just a few spaces. It was my number 34 last year. I'm going to combine two games here. And last year I had them separate, and it never sat well with me because they are so similar. They're the same family of games. I put them together this year. This is a game that we've talked about a lot on the show. It's a game that when 20 years ago, this was one of the only games I played. We played it constantly. And really, the only thing I don't like about this game, and really the only reason I'm not playing it a lot these days, is because it's a long game. This can be a 7-8 hour game or more. And because of that, we just haven't played it that much. But it is so much fun. It's a game of pure strategy. There is no chance. There's no dice. There's no cards. It's all about personalities. I am, of course, speaking about Diplomacy. Diplomacy and Colonial Diplomacy, kind of a sequel to it. It's the same game, just a different map. It's brilliant. You've got armies, you've got navies, and how do you maneuver them to capture cities, supply centers around the board? And no one player is strong enough to do it all by himself, so you have to make alliances. And the trick is, when do you work with other people, and when do you realize some people are getting too powerful and you turn against them? It is a brilliant game. It is very fun. I know a lot of people say it's boring. It can be if you don't get into it. There's an element of role-playing here, and it's just one of my absolute best gaming experiences I've ever had, that we've talked about on the show, happened with that game. Maybe at some point in the future I'll do like my top 10 favorite gaming experiences. This one will definitely be on the list. Maybe at the top. We'll see. But Diplomacy is amazing. I love it, I love it, I love it. It was created in 1958. It was Henry Kissinger and John F. Kennedy's favorite board game. And the designer, whose name eludes me at the moment, he just passed away here about a year or two ago. And I kind of felt bad about that. Brilliant game. It's from Hasbro Avalon Hill, I think, is printing it now, if memory serves. So, Wizards of the Coast, that same conglomerate company. But it's a great game. That is Diplomacy. That is my number 37. My number 36 is another game that I absolutely love, that I used to play a ton. Played it right after it came out, about 7 or 8 years ago. Played it a ton. And for a long time, this was, again, about the only game I was playing. I was kind of a guy who would find a game, and that's all I'd play for like years, like 2 or 3 years. And I loved that game so much, and I just haven't gotten it out lately. So it has fallen. It was my number 24. It's my 36 now. And this is Axis and Allies, the Anniversary Edition. Now, Axis and Allies, the Anniversary Edition is, of course, a lot like the other editions of Axis and Allies, but there's some important tweaks. The strategic bombing is a little bit different. One of the reasons why I love this one, though, is this is the only edition of the World War II Axis and Allies where Italy is a playable nation. So it's not just Germany and Japan, it's Germany, Italy, and Japan. Italy's kind of almost next to useless for most of the game, but if you play it right, it can be very powerful. It can provide just that extra little oomph the Axis may need. So it's a fun game, a great light war game. I mean, Axis and Allies is one of the best light war games of all time, and this is easily my favorite edition of the full map, the full world map, Axis and Allies. So again, that is Axis and Allies Anniversary Edition. This was Avalon Hill, and that came out, that was my number 36, was my number 24. My number 35 was a game that was number 10 last year. And frankly, I took a lot of flack for it. Maybe even not so much flack, but a lot of raised eyebrows. A lot of, really? That was your number 10? That was your number 10? Including from some people who I had played it with before, who didn't care for it as much as I did, including Zach, who really did not like this game, though he is willing to give it another shot in the future. And, in fact, even my liaison with the company that produces this game said, I was really surprised you picked that to be your number 10. But I really enjoyed it. I really had fun with it. There are problems. It's not perfect. And, again, I've been playing it a lot. And the more I've thought about it, the more I thought maybe it didn't deserve to be number 10. And so that's why it's my number 35 this year. And this, of course, is Rex. Twilight Imperium Rex. This is a game that takes place in the Twilight Imperium universe, but it takes place on the capital city of Mechatol Rex. And there on Mechatol Rex, essentially, it's right as the Empire is falling, and different factions, different alien races are kind of vying for control. And what I like about it is, first of all, it's asymmetrical. So everybody has different powers, different abilities. I like asymmetrical games like that. And also, too, there's a lot of negotiation in this game. This is a game where you're working on alliances, and you can get rid of alliances, and you can win joint victories in alliances. And I really like that. There's just a lot of really fun and interesting things going on in this game. So that is Rex from Fantasy Flight Games. That is once again, my number 35 was my number 10. My number 34 is a game that I have not, again, been playing a lot lately, but the more and more I thought about it, and the more I compared it to some of these other games, the more and more I thought, this is just really a fantastic game, and I gotta get it out more. I gotta play it. I said that last year, and I haven't played it in the last year, but I just think about this game a lot, think about all the fun we had with it. This is, again, another game I picked up years ago that I just played a lot for a long, long time. This is the American Civil War from Eagle Games. American Civil War. Now, earlier in the list I mentioned Napoleon in Europe. This is kind of the same series as Napoleon in Europe, but of course it's set in the American Civil War. And I like it better than Napoleon in Europe because it's a lot less complicated. But it has that same system where you have the kind of the grand strategic board of the United States that you're kind of moving troops on and moving around. But then also when you actually fight the battles, you have a battle board. And you put a partition in between you so you can each set up your armies in secret, and then you can kind of see how you're going to fight, and you're trying to eliminate kind of one flank of your enemy. Brilliant, brilliant combat system. It's just a super fun game. One, again, I need to play. And you can do things like Emancipation Proclamation or British recognition of the South. All sorts of fun things. Good historical flavor. Good light war game. I really enjoy the American Civil War. Once again, that is my number 34. It was my number 50. My number 33 fell a little bit. It was my number 21. And this is a game that I like a lot, and I just haven't played it as much. But it's another game that I bought. I played a lot when I got it. I played it a few times since, and again, I needed to play it again. I like it, but the more I thought about it, there's just other games I like better. This is Axis and Allies Pacific. Again, this was an Avalon Hill edition, and Axis and Allies Pacific is, I mentioned earlier in the list, Axis and Allies Europe. This was, of course, the companion piece to it. And I've got to tell you, I'm a historian, and the European theater of operations in World War II is kind of my primary thing I researched. Nazi Germany and the German High Command. And yet, I still, and just in studying history, I always gravitate toward the European theater. And yet with this game, I much preferred the Pacific theater. I remember when I bought this game, I was working at the theater where I worked back then. This is 15 years ago. And Zach was there, and I bought it, and we didn't have time to play it, but we said, let's just set it up. Let's just set up the starting scenario and see how it looks. Okay, let's do it. So we just set it up, and it was a thing of beauty. And I loved it. I loved the naval aspect of the game. I loved the carriers, and it's just a brilliant naval strategy game. But it's not just naval. You're also fighting in Asia and on the islands. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful game that embraces the Pacific theater in World War II. It does it very, very well. That is Axis and Allies Pacific, my number 33. It was my number 21. My number 32 fell 10 points. It was my number 22. I really, really like this game a lot. One of the reasons why it's fallen, again, haven't played it as much, but I'm disappointed because the company that makes it had stated that they were going to really support this and make more expansions, and I think the game just did not capture people's imagination the way they thought it would, and so I haven't heard anything more about expansion factions or anything, which is a shame because this is just a phenomenal game. This is Leviathans from Catalyst Game Labs. Leviathans is this great game of essentially, it's alternate history, early 20th century, where a Polish scientist in the late 19th century had invented this new element that can essentially lift objects. And so by the early 20th century, the French and the British have built these massive dreadnoughts, ships that float. So they're like flying, they're like dirigibles, but they're heavy. They're made of metal. And of course, so you're moving them around on a board. It kind of, the way you set it up, it almost looks like a game of, X-Wing miniatures or something. But you're moving it, and you've got these big, heavy ships, and the way you're firing at each other, and you're taking out the guns or the rudders, it's a naval game, but it's a naval game in the air, and it's thematic. I love the theme of the game. It's very steampunky. Love the theme of the game. It comes with like a novella and all sorts of bells and whistles in the box, and it just, it's fun. It's fun. You play with torpedoes, and torpedoes are like, ugh. I don't always play with torpedoes. It gets too crazy for me with that. But I love the game. I love it, and I wish they would come up with the new factions. I think about an Italian and a German faction. We never saw them. But if you get a chance, check out Leviathans. I think it's still in print, the original. Check that out. That is my number 32. It was my 22. My number 31 is a game I played just about a month, 2 months ago. Not very long ago. It's a war game, but it's so much more than a war game, and it's relatively complicated, but it's not overly complicated. This is Triumph and Tragedy from GMT Games. Triumph and Tragedy is a brilliant game because it does not start with the war. You're in Europe, but it doesn't start with a war breaking out. Rather, it starts in 1936, a few years before the war. And you're not strictly playing specific countries. You're playing ideologies. So, like for instance, you're playing kind of Western capitalism is one of the ideologies, divided only by Britain and France kind of on one side and America on the other, and then Russia representing communism, Italy and Germany representing fascism. And what's cool is the first few game rounds, it's a diplomatic game. You're essentially competing for playing cards to gain favor in a lot of these kind of neutral countries. You want them to join your faction. But if somebody plays a card that gets it, you can put a chit there. If somebody else plays a card, they can remove the chit. They play more cards, they can put it there. If they get so many, then boom, they become part of your alliance. It's a great race in those first few rounds. And then once the war breaks out, and the war doesn't have to break out like it did historically. You can actually, the first game we played, England, the West, invaded Russia via India. So there's all sorts of things, and I was Germany. I'm just kind of sitting there in peace, collecting kind of peace dividends, and I did that for a while before I finally got dragged into the war. But it's great, some great counterfactual history here, and just a lot of fun. It's a block war game where you're rotating the blocks. It's a long game, so be prepared for that. But really, if you like war games and you're willing to invest time in it, this one is just a little bit better than most of them out there, in my opinion. World War II era games, it's just, it gives something really special to this kind of genre. So that is Triumph and Tragedy. That is my number 31, new to the list this year from GMT Games. So that is it for our list today. We still got 3 more of these 10 lists to go. Again, join me for the top 10 list. I got something really special coming at you when we do that. If you saw last year's top 100 list, my top 10, we did something really fun. Something similar is coming up, but different. So pay attention. I think you're going to get a kick out of it. Please leave a comment on YouTube, Board Game Geek, Facebook, our website. I want to know, what do you think of the list? Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think? Do you agree with me? I'm really interested to know what you think of these lists. I'm not getting paid for this, so I kind of feed off of your reactions. I'm kind of an energy vampire that way. But at any rate, please check us out. We are The Discriminating Gamer. And a guy walks into the doctor's office, and he asks the doctor, so what's wrong with me? The doctor says, well, you're going to die. That man says, I want a second opinion. The doctor says, okay, you're ugly too. That's my favorite joke!
Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't...
And these games... Start repeating again. Start repeating again. And these games...
Oh, I was looking at something.
That's fine, just repeat. And these games
that
you play
are
the best. So he says to be viewed on YouTube are the top 20. Repeat that part.
Sorry.
Top 100 games. There's a guy who likes games, and the best that he's played are the ones that just say to be viewed on YouTube, and the games that he plays are the best that he says are the top 100 games.
I thought it was around.
It's supposed to be.